Imagine waking up one day and realizing you feel nothing, not sorrow, not joy, not even the dull ache of routine, just a flat, soundless hum beneath your skin as if your soul had packed its bags in the middle of the night and slipped out without saying goodbye. You sip your coffee. You smile when expected. You type words into glowing screens and scroll past pixelated faces pretending they're real. But something is missing. Not like forgetting your keys or leaving the stove on. No. Something deeper, something that once gave color to your thoughts and weight to your breath is gone. And perhaps it's been gone for a while. Maybe you didn't notice at first. After all, life moves fast. There's always another deadline, another feed to refresh, another dopamine burst waiting on the other side of a swipe. But slowly, something sacred began to dull. You began to replace presence with performance, meaning with metrics, silence with static. The soul, your soul once vivid and loud, became quiet, and now you're left asking a terrifying question. What happens when a person becomes a ghost inside their own body? Everywhere you look, people are exhausted. Not from work or lack of sleep, but from carrying around a kind of invisible emptiness. We joke about burnout, about being dead inside, about needing caffeine just to function. But behind the memes and punchlines is something ancient and sad. We live in an age where we can touch anyone through a screen, but barely feel ourselves. We curate lives that look meaningful online while quietly drifting away from the one place that truly matters, within. You start to wonder, when did distraction become a lifestyle? Why does solitude now feel like suffocation? Is this numbness a protective shell, or a prison I've forgotten how to leave? Because here's the thing, numbness isn't the opposite of pain. It's the absence of meaning. And meaning, when lost, doesn't leave a hole, it leaves an echo. An echo that haunts even the happiest moments with a whisper. Is this all there is? And the most unsettling part? You're not alone. People across the world are reporting it, this quiet crisis of feeling nothing at all. It doesn't matter your job, your income, your beliefs. The emptiness spreads like a fog, indiscriminate, silent, and cold. You feel it in late-night thoughts, in crowded rooms, in the moment the music stops and all that's left is your heartbeat and the silence. But what if this isn't just personal? What if the numbness you feel isn't a flaw in you, but a symptom of something much larger, something embedded in the architecture of modern life? What if the soul's search is not failing because you're broken, but because the world is designed to keep you asleep? So we arrive at a paradox. You long to feel alive in a world that rewards emotional anesthesia. You seek truth in a culture built on masks. You crave meaning in a system that profits from your emptiness. How do you even begin to navigate that? The soul, after all, doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't fight for attention the way algorithms do. It speaks in moments of silence, in goosebumps, in tears you didn't expect. But we've buried it under noise, notifications, and the endless urge to be seen instead of to see. You've made it this far. You've survived. You've adapted. But surviving isn't the same as living. And deep down, you know this. Which leads us to the real question, not one of productivity or pleasure, but something far more unsettling and necessary. What if your soul has been trying to get your attention all along, and you've simply forgotten how to listen? And so, here we stand, on the edge of something sacred. Not a solution. Not yet. But a doorway. A moment of confrontation. Because before we can break free, before we can rebel, we must understand the root of this numbness. Not just what it feels like, but what created it, what fed it, what allowed it to become normal. To go forward, we must go deeper into the shadows of our psychology, the blind spots of our culture, and the neglected corners of the human spirit. And that journey begins now. Beneath the numbness lies not just absence, but architecture. This world, the one that quietly hollowed you out, wasn't born of accident. It was designed meticulously, subtly layer by layer, belief by belief, until the very foundation of your identity rested on something fragile and false. To understand the soul's disconnection, you must first ask, what story have you been living and who wrote it? Because if you look closely, you'll see it wasn't you. The quiet machinery of emptiness. Long before you felt numb, you were conditioned to trade essence for appearance. As a child, you were taught to be polite instead of honest, to get good grades instead of ask big questions, to compete instead of connect. And this conditioning didn't just shape your behavior, it rewired your sense of self. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." But in truth, we carry far more than just that. We bear the weight of entire civilizations' expectations. We inherit collective dreams that often feel like nightmares when lived out. We become mirrors for other people's ideals, and somewhere along the way, the mirror forgets it once held its own reflection. Think about it. You're told you must succeed. But what defines success, and who benefits from that definition? You're told to be happy. But what does happiness mean when sold to you by advertisements and social validation metrics? You're told to be yourself. But which self? Is that the one under your skin or the one filtered through a screen? This dissonance is not coincidental. It's systemic. Modernity's psychological blueprint, a silent hijacking. The Austrian psychoanalyst Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, famously observed, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." And that is the blueprint of the modern psyche. Distract, stimulate, consume, repeat. But behind the curated meals, binge-watched series, and performative wellness routines lies a growing void. A void not caused by suffering, but by the absence of authentic suffering. The kind that refines, the kind that births insight. We've built an entire culture on avoiding pain, but pain, as the soul knows, is not the enemy. It is the call to wake up. The invention of identity and the loss of essence. Friedrich Nietzsche once declared, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But we've inverted his wisdom. We've built a world obsessed with how to get more followers, how to make more money, how to optimize every second while forgetting to ask why. In this reversal, identity has become externalized. Not something felt, but something managed, marketed, measured. You are no longer you. You are a brand, a data point, a vessel for engagement, and the soul vast, messy, contradictory, doesn't survive long in a world that rewards coherence over complexity. You begin to feel like a stranger to yourself, not because something is wrong with you, but because something has been stripped from you quietly, efficiently. The great substitution, meaning replaced by mechanism. Jean-Paul Sartre believed that existence precedes essence, that we are born not with a soul, but with the freedom to create one. But how do you create anything when your world runs on templates, on algorithms, on outcomes? This is the hidden mechanism of numbness. It substitutes aliveness with function. Feeling is replaced with reaction. Wonder is replaced with certainty. The mysterious is replaced with the measurable. You go to work not to create, but to comply. You speak not to express, but to impress. You love not to be transformed, but to feel less alone in the cage. And slowly, you stop asking the questions that once made your spirit burn. Questions like, who am I when no one's watching? What would I do if I weren't afraid? What if the system I'm surviving in is actually what's killing me? The philosophical abyss, when the world stops making sense. Arthur Schopenhauer believed life was defined by a cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. We chase what we want, we get it, we grow bored, and so we chase again, endlessly, tirelessly, painfully, But what happens when even desire goes numb? When you no longer yearn, not because you've found peace, but because you've lost connection. That's when the soul begins to drift. Not because it's weak, but because it's been locked in a cage of constant performance. We live in a hyper-stimulated world that has confused movement with meaning. You scroll through 10 lives a minute, but can't feel your own breath. And that is the soul's slow death. The numbness is not just a symptom, it's a message. What you feel isn't failure. It's not a flaw. It's the soul screaming through silence. It's your body rejecting the script. It's your psyche mourning the loss of depth. This world taught you how to numb, but it never taught you how to feel. It offered comfort, but not connection. It praised logic, but punished truth. And now here you are, waking up in a world where everything feels hollow, and yet something inside you still resists. That resistance is not weakness. It's the beginning of return. You thought the numbness was just emotional, a passing phase, a mood to shake off with more sleep, a better routine, or a weekend away. But what if it's not a feeling? What if it's become a filter? One you now see the world through, one so subtle, so pervasive, that you no longer remember what life felt like before the veil came down? Because numbness isn't just internal. It seeps outward. It doesn't just dull your feelings, it redesigns your reality. The life you didn't choose. When you feel deeply, you choose with intention. You listen to intuition. You feel your way through decisions toward people, places, pursuits that ignite something real inside you. But when you're numb, you don't choose, you drift. You fall into jobs, relationships, ideologies, lifestyles, not because they resonate with your soul, but because they're available, easy, or expected. And slowly, a life is built around you like scaffolding. Functional, predictable, hollow. You wake up one day surrounded by routines that don't nourish you, people who don't see you, and dreams you don't remember choosing. It's not just a lost life. It's a life mislived. Neurological dissonance, the brain's new default. The human brain is adaptive, neuroplastic. It rewires to match its environment. But when that environment is saturated with overstimulation, speed, and shallow rewards, the brain begins to lose its depth. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation, the process by which novelty fades and nothing is ever enough. That vacation thrill? Gone in days. The promotion? Dull within weeks. The affection? Normalized and unnoticed. So what do? You chase, harder, faster, desperately. Because when life feels empty, movement feels like meaning. But it isn't. It's a loop. This isn't just about habits. It's neural architecture. When the brain is trained to respond only to pings, likes, and likes, it stops recognizing stillness as safety. Stillness becomes danger. Boredom becomes unbearable. Silence becomes screaming. You scroll, not for pleasure, but to silence the panic that arises when you're left alone with your own mind. And that is the soul's final warning. The body remembers what the mind ignores. You may not realize it, but your body does. Your nervous system stores the tension of this disconnection. Your jaw clenches during small talk. Your shoulders rise with unspoken grief. Your sleep breaks at 3 a.m., your heart racing from dreams you can't remember. This isn't random. It's a response to unreality. The numbness may dull emotion, but the body keeps count. Cortisol levels spike. Heart rhythms destabilize. Inflammatory responses activate because deep inside, some part of you knows this life you're living is not the one your soul signed up for. And the further you drift from authenticity, the louder the body whispers until whisper becomes scream and illness becomes the only language left. The culture of emotional amnesia society does not reward depth. It rewards performance. And so you learn to wear masks, not out of deceit, but survival. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You smile when your eyes are burning. You celebrate milestones that don't feel real. And each time you do, a fracture forms between your inner world and the outer one. A split, a schism. Over time, this becomes emotional amnesia, forgetting of what it feels like to feel fully. You remember how to function, how to act okay. But the felt sense of being alive, of awe, wonder, raw sorrow, ecstatic joy becomes foreign, threatening even. You meet a sunset and feel nothing. You hold a lover and feel distant. You achieve a lifelong dream and wonder. Why does it feel like a chore? Because when you're numb, even beauty feels like noise. The sociological spiral, a world built to sustain the fog. And here's where it gets darker. You are not alone in this disconnection. It's systemic. In fact, it's profitable. A numb society is a compliant society. When people are emotionally disengaged, they become excellent consumers. They seek external fixes for internal voids. They don't protest systems that exploit them. They distract themselves from them. Aldous Huxley warned us in Brave New World not of tyranny by force, but of tyranny by pleasure, of a society so doped on comfort and stimulation that truth becomes irrelevant. That future is no longer fiction. We self-soothe with convenience. We drown unrest in dopamine. We medicate symptoms instead of examining their roots. Because awakening would be inconvenient. It would require us to question everything we've been taught to value. But the longer we delay that awakening, the deeper the numbness metastasizes into politics, education, relationships, even spirituality. We begin to worship not what is sacred, but what is marketable. And that is the final frontier of disconnection, when even the search for meaning becomes another brand to sell. The self-loss loop. You begin to forget who you were before the fog, before the scrolling, before the masks, not all at once, but piece by piece. Your laughter becomes a sound you perform, not a reflex you feel. Your memories feel like someone else's story. Your soul feels like a rumor you once heard in childhood. This is not just a psychological loss. It's an existential one. You don't just feel numb. You begin to forget how to feel. And when that happens, when numbness becomes your default state, you don't just survive inside a broken system. You become part of it. Not all revolutions begin with fire. Some begin in silence, not with shouts in the streets, but with a whisper inside your ribs. There has to be more than this. That whisper is dangerous. It marks the end of submission. It means the soul is waking up, stretching its limbs after years of slumber, and asking, what if I refuse to be numb? That's where rebellion begins, not in anger, but in remembering. And remembering, in a world built to make you forget, is an act of spiritual warfare. Step 1. Unlearning the lie. Before you can reclaim yourself, you must confront the architecture of the lie you've been living. The lie that productivity is worth more than presence. The lie that being busy means being valuable. The lie that numbness is strength, that feeling less makes you more powerful. Power is not in suppression. Power is in the courage to feel, to grieve what never became, to rage at what was stolen, to ache for what still calls to you in dreams. To feel is to re-enter the human experience, raw and unfiltered. And in a system that thrives on anesthesia, feeling deeply is rebellion. Step 2. Begin the rituals of return. Reclaiming your soul doesn't require a roadmap. It requires reverence, not for dogma, but for the small, forgotten rituals that connect you to what's real. Sit in silence long enough for your thoughts to become strangers. Touch earth with bare hands. Let your skin remember its origin. Speak the truth, even when your voice shakes. Create something that isn't monetized. A poem, a painting, a moment of useless beauty. Cry without apology. Laugh without performance. These are not escapes. They are returns. To self, to source, to soul. You don't need to escape your life. You need to re-inhabit it. Step 3. Reject the metrics of a hollow world. You will be tempted to measure your worth in numbers. How many followers? How much money? How fast your growth? How optimized your morning routine? Resist. Your soul is not a brand. Your inner life is not a business plan. Your joy is not a metric. The rebellion begins when you stop performing for systems that never had your best interest at heart. Systems that reward appearance over essence, obedience over truth, conformity over authenticity. Break the loop by refusing to play. Choose presence over proof, depth over display, stillness over stimulation. Step 4. Relearn the language of the soul. The soul doesn't speak in bullet points. It doesn't shout over noise. It doesn't operate on deadlines. It speaks in goosebumps, in the lump in your throat when you hear a forgotten song, in the deep pull you feel towards something you can't name. To break free, you must relearn how to listen, journal without purpose, walk without destination, feel without fixing. Let life become less about solving and more about sensing. You are not a problem to optimize. You are a mystery to unfold. Step 5. Find the others. The rebellion is not solitary. Scattered across the world are others, like you quietly resisting. People who hunger for the real, who are tired of pretending, who want to speak from the belly, not the mask. Find them, not in loud places but in sacred ones, in long conversations, in books that burn, in eyes that don't look away. Build altars together, not of religion but of remembrance, places where your truth is not judged but witnessed. There is power in communion, in shared vulnerability, in the collective exhale of those who've been holding their breath for too long. This is how the numb world begins to crack, not from force, but from the quiet insistence of the awakened. Step 6. Let go of who you were told to be. You will grieve the person you've been, the one who played the part, who smiled for approval, who dimmed their light to make others comfortable. Let them go. That was survival, but now it's time to live. To become the one who listens inwardly, speaks truthfully, and walks as if their soul is guiding each step because it is. This new self will feel unfamiliar, strange, unstable. That's good. That means you're leaving the simulation. Radical presence is the final act of defiance. This world wants you on autopilot. It wants you to chase, to compare, to numb. Because a person who is constantly chasing never stops long enough to ask, why am I running in the first place? But presence disrupts the machine. When you pause, when you breathe, when you simply be, you break the spell. And slowly, the fog begins to lift. Colors return. Synchronicities appear. The ache in your chest becomes a compass, not a curse. You are no longer a spectator in your life. You are the sacred participant. And then something extraordinary happens. The rebellion becomes revelation. The fragments begin to form a pattern. The numbness begins to make sense. The silence you feared begins to sing. And just before the final veil lifts, you realize this entire time you were not lost. You were being called home. You were never broken. Let that settle for a moment. All this time, through the numbness, the confusion, the drifting, you believed you were damaged. You questioned your worth. You blamed your sensitivity. You silenced your questions. You shrank your soul to fit inside boxes built by other people's expectations. But here's the truth, the one so few are ever told. Your pain was never dysfunction, it was data. Your emptiness was not failure, it was feedback. Your yearning was not foolish, it was a map. You were not malfunctioning. You were responding wisely, instinctively to a world that asked you to abandon yourself. The soul's language was never lost, only ignored. Somewhere deep inside you, a still point has always existed. A place before identity, before performance, before memory. A knowing. Children feel it easily, the awe, the immersion, the presence. But then, it begins. We are taught to override, to obey, to compete, to conform, to numb. And so, The soul goes silent not because it dies, but because we stop listening. But now, something has shifted. You've slowed down. You've looked beneath the surface. You've faced the void and found, not darkness, but depth. The soul has not left you. It has waited patiently, beneath every distraction, beneath every performance, beneath every quiet ache. And now, at last, you've made your way back. The truth beneath all noise. You are the sacred witness. In a culture obsessed with doing, producing, and achieving, we forget the most sacred human function, to witness, to be with, to presence life as it is not as it should be. This is not passivity, it's power. The trees do not strive to impress. The ocean does not apologize for its depth. The stars do not measure their worth by attention received. And yet, they endure. They awe. They exist. You too were meant for that kind of truth. Not the truth of productivity or persona, but of presence. You are not here to be perfect. You are not here to be approved. You are here to be whole. And wholeness includes the numbness, the rage, the longing, the contradiction. It includes all of you. The grand reversal, meaning, was never outside of you. We spend our lives looking outward, for answers, for teachers, for signs. But the real awakening happens when the seeking stops, not because you give up, but because you look inward and realize you were the meaning, you were the miracle, you were the one you were waiting for. All your life the world said, you are not enough. Become more, do more, show more. But the soul whispers something different. You are already whole. Now remember. This remembering is not intellectual. It's visceral. It's a reactivation of something ancient, something divine. And once you taste it even for a moment, you'll never go back. The world will not change until you do. And that's the secret. People ask, how do we fix the world? And the truth is, you don't fix the world. You feel it. You awaken within it. You transform your presence, and in doing so, you change the field around you. This is not metaphor. It's physics. You are not separate from the whole. Your inner reality shapes the outer one. When you numb, the world grows duller. When you awaken, the world begins to shimmer again. And so the most radical thing you can do, the most defiant, revolutionary act is not to shout louder. It's to feel deeper, to walk through the world as one who remembers, who listens, who sees. You become a mirror for others, not by preaching, but by being. A lighthouse doesn't chase boats. It stands still. And by its light, others find their way. A poetic ending, the return to self. So now, as you stand here no longer asleep, no longer lost, you feel it. That subtle hum inside your chest, the soul, not some mystical abstraction, but the raw, undeniable you that always was. Not perfect, but real. Not loud, but luminous. You walk through a city full of static and suddenly hear bird song again. You hold a friend's hand and feel warmth instead of obligation. You watch a child play and remember, this is what we came for, to be, to feel, to love, to wake. And maybe that's the truth that matters most. You don't need to find the soul. You only need to stop running from it. In the end, this was never about healing what was broken. It was about uncovering what was buried, about remembering what the numbness tried to make you forget, that the soul is not a luxury. It is not a fantasy. It is your compass, your truth, your home. And now, as you exhale, not with exhaustion, but with clarity, you realize the search is over. The numbness is gone. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Welcome back.